Kate back for part 2 of my Q&A. And this question is by Michael K19, the CF fan. He says, question 1, what is your favorite Jane Austen or Victorian adaptation? And okay, I actually think I know this immediately. Wow. I didn't think that, but they just came to mind, okay? I'm feeling impulsive. I'm going to say the 1995 Pride and Prejudice. I really, really love this film. It's so good. But then, or 95 Sense and Sensibility. Both of them are just way up there, and I find them incredibly comforting. Or 2009 Emma. Okay, maybe I wasn't so sure. Those are my favorite out of those. But I do also love 2009 Sense and Sensibility. Okay, then Victorian adaptation has got to be the newer adaptation of The Moonstone. I will just sing this miniseries praises forever. It's so good. And this is an example. I complained in my last video about the newer adaptation of The Woman in White. This is an example of someone taking a great story that has plenty of tension in it already and not trying to elevate it even higher. It just takes the plot, which is amazing, and makes it into an amazing miniseries. So good. Highly recommend it. Okay, and then question 2 is, of the 3 men from Thomas Hardy's Far from the Madding Crowd, which one do you find most appealing? Gabriel Oak. I do not have to think about that, and probably a big part of my bias is the film that came out. I mean, Gabriel Oak is just a wonderful character. He's so reliable and even-keeled and, what do I want to say, steady, and I just adore him. Anita Haynes says, who are your 3 favorite heroes or heroines in literature, as well as my 3 favorite villains and why, and where do I prefer to read, in a comfy chair, bed, patio, etc. My favorite place to read, I either like to read propped up in bed or down on the sofa, but I like to have a pillow for cushion and then a blanket. I love to have a blanket, even in the summertime. I like to have a lighter blanket. I just like to be cozy with a nice beverage. That's me miming a beverage there. Okay, 3 favorite heroes/heroines in literature. I would have to say, I think that Saoirse from Daughter of the Forest is going to be in the top 3. I really do love Saoirse. And then let's say Betsy Ray from the Betsy Tacy series. I just adore her. Even if she is a bit more of a social butterfly than I am, I really, really love her. And I really love Molly Gibson. I don't know if she's my favorite, though. I'm having trouble with the 3rd. I mean, I do really like Molly Gibson. I was just trying to think if there's anybody else. But she also said heroes, so it could be... Maybe I'll just stick with those answers. I think I will just stick with those answers, yes. I feel good about them. And they also represent kind of the different kinds of books that I like to read. The next one says, how often do you read contemporary novels? And do you have any contemporary must-reads? So, contemporary, do you mean written in more modern day? Or do you mean it's like contemporary fiction? Because I kind of, the kinds of books that I read, it's like they're either classics or modern genre fiction. Those are my 2 kind of reading happy zones. So if you want contemporary mysteries, like I read a lot of those. I read, more modern middle grade. I read some fantasy, historical romance. I love historical romance. But if it's just modern day, like literary fiction, there's really not much I'm going to read. This is one that is just literary fiction. One that I read last year and loved, and this is like the only contemporary book that I've loved in a long time, is The Lighthouse by Michael O'Brien. Although, how old is this? Oh, 2020. So this is a recent book. And it is about this man who is the lighthouse keeper in this small town, and he thinks that his life has not made any impact or difference. Thinking about it now, I'm like, ooh, I would like to go back to this. It's a very quiet read, but Michael O'Brien's writing is what kept me pulled in, and I've really enjoyed this. So, I don't know if that's what you were thinking of, but I do love a lot more modern books. And if you're looking for kind of like modern books, but it could be genre fiction, then just watch my favorite books of 2021 and you'll have an idea of the books that I love that were newer releases, but that I read last year. Amy of Hearth Ridge, which I'm going to link her channel down below. I've shared one of her videos before. If you like the books that I like, go to Amy's channel. You will not regret it. Amy asks, did I come to a lot of my favorite books as a child or as an adult? And what was the book that cemented your love of reading? This is a great question. I think that actually, though, a lot of my favorite books I have come to as an adult. I have kind of reader amnesia, which makes me so sad. It breaks my heart. I don't remember a lot that I read as a kid. Betsy Tacy is one of the shining beacons. And then I also remember reading Gone Away Lake and Return to Gone Away Lake by Elizabeth Enright, and The Hobbit and the Little House books. Two books that I'm really sad I didn't love as a kid. I tried both of them and I remember being like, I don't know. I don't feel like reading these. Anne of Green Gables and Little Women, which I love now. I love. So that makes me sad. But the book that I think just cemented my love of reading, it might surprise you a little bit, but it is Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. I loved that book. I don't know. Now I'm scared to reread it. Like, will I love it as much? I don't know that I would, but it was my first big classic to read. And seeing how a classic author can have all of these interwoven plot lines and pull them together, yes, that just blew my mind. It's interesting because now I would say I like Jane Austen more than Charles Dickens, but I know that in high school I read Pride and Prejudice and I liked it, but it didn't blow my mind the same way. But now Pride and Prejudice is, I would rank it way higher than Oliver Twist. So it just shows you just change as a reader through the years. Morgan, my Morgan friend, I love her. She says, what is your strategy for getting so much read in a day with 2 young kids? I know you do audiobooks. Do you listen with headphones? I'm trying to beef up my strategy and need tips. Side note, I will link down below. Morgan has started with her sister and bestie a bookish podcast called Redeeming Lit, and it is all about Christian fiction. And it's so awesome that she is starting this because she's just such an interesting person. And so I think she will just do wonderfully with this podcast. Okay. The first thing that I do is I set an alarm and I wake up early. And I do like my Bible reading first thing of the day. And then I get my most arduous reading over with before the boys are up. So lately I read 2 chapters of George Eliot, and then I try to read 6 pages out of Robert Browning's The Ring and the Book. Although I won't do that long because we're only reading 2 books a month. Because there's 12 books that make up The Ring and the Book. Anyhow, so I do kind of my more concentrated reading early in the day. The second is with audiobooks. I think our kids are at slightly different stages. Like there are swaths of time where the boys will go off and play on their own and I can listen to an audiobook then. Also, a lot of afternoons, Peter's off listening to his own audiobook and I am either reading a physical book or listening to an audiobook, and Arthur's kind of playing on his own and talking to himself, but not to me. So also just any instance that I have, anytime I'm in the car, anytime I'm not being interrupted by them and I'm doing something, I have an audiobook on. So I think just being willing to pause it a lot, not do long sessions. I hope that helps. Miriam Elizabeth Reeds says, what is your favorite romantic couple from classic lit? What books do you love that are in a genre you are not normally a fan of? Okay, my favorite romantic couple from classic lit is going to be Betsy Ray and Joe Willard. I sound like a broken record. I adore this couple. And I just love that it was from the second that Betsy saw Joe, she just kind of fell for him. And the relationship definitely had its ups and downs. But why I especially love it is that Maud, the author, who was the inspiration for Betsy, and Delas, her husband, who was the inspiration for Joe, they got married only 6 months after meeting each other, and they had a very long and happy marriage. And so it's just so sweet to me, this inspiration. And apparently Delas, her husband, was kind of self-conscious about his looks, but he was a very handsome man, but he was self-conscious about it. And she just constantly in the Betsy Tacy series is saying how handsome Joe Willard was. He's so handsome, just going on and on about it. And I just think it's the sweetest thing. Oh, I love it. Janice McDougall says, maybe you've answered these questions before, but I'm wondering who gave you the love of reading and why do I love reading? My parents gave me the love of reading. My dad is a former English teacher and my mom really would enjoy reading for leisure. And so I was in a household where I saw reading modeled. And so I think, on the Read Aloud Revival podcast, she's talked about that kids are much more likely to be readers themselves if they live in a house where reading is thought of as a form of entertainment. And then why do I love reading? It has kind of evolved over the years. Before, when I first started reading as a hobby as an adult, it was mental, I want to better myself. I want to read classics. And I still like doing that. I still like reading classics. But then I kind of found mysteries and fairy tale retellings and, these kinds of reading that were a little bit easier on my brain and were really fun and entertaining. And so then I got chronically ill. It's 3.5 years ago now. I got a chronic illness, and reading has just become such a comforting thing and an escape. And I am okay with that. I am okay with escaping through books to not think for a little while about how sick I feel. That's honestly, I'm so grateful for books, and I'm so grateful for libraries because I could never afford to buy all of the books that I like to check out through the library. Yes, just, a saving grace. Highberry says, Highberry, that makes me think of Jane Austen. What is a classic Victorian novel that is due for a film or limited series, or one that has been on film/TV that is overdue for a new, fresh take? Okay, hands down, Deerbrook by Harriet Martineau. That book, for people that love Elizabeth Gaskell, that love Wives and Daughters and Cranford, Deerbrook would be amazing. Along with The Heir of Redcliffe by Charlotte Young, both of those would make fabulous character-driven miniseries. Okay, the next question says, what are your top 10 mysteries from 2021? I did not do my homework on this. I'm going to put this in the comments because I'm sure I probably had about 10 mysteries that were in my favorite books of 2021. Jody Howe says, when you get to England, what would your literary trip look like? Oh my gosh. Okay. I would love to visit Elizabeth Gaskell's house in Manchester and then head on over to the Bronte Parsonage and then go to the Lake District, the land of Wordsworth and Beatrix Potter. I would love to go to Exmoor, which is where Lorna Doone is set. I mean, so many places. I would love to visit I would love to go to, you can visit Sabine Baring Gould's house, and it is near Cornwall. I would love to go there. And I'm trying to think what else. Maybe some E. Nesbit sites. Some Robert Louis Stevenson sites in Scotland. Just so much. I realized a question that I forgot to answer back was my three favorite heroes/heroines in literature, as well as my three favorite villains. And I forgot to answer the villains question. So I can think of two right off the top of my head. One would be Long John Silver from Treasure Island because he is so complex. And I love that. You're constantly guessing. You're not sure about him. And then Count Fosco from The Woman in White. He is so creepy. He is unbelievably creepy. And then another villain. Let's say Lady Catherine de Bourgh from Pride and Prejudice. She's not technically a villain, but boy, she sure feels like it. Name 1 to 3 fiction books that have had a lasting impact on my outlook in life. You know what? I'm going to come back to that question. That is a very good question, and I want to give it the adequate time that it deserves. Okay, what is a genre that I have tried but hated, and what book have my sons got me to try and that I love? Okay, a genre I have tried and hated. Hate might be a strong term, but one of the genres that I've read around 10 books of and have just decided I don't like it is the thriller genre, because I just can't handle the intense ride you're supposed to take on the journey of the book, and where you don't really know the characters that well, and then you're just done and it's ripped off like a band-aid. It's just not my favorite kind of reading experience. I'm willing to have that kind of intense reading experience with Juliette Marillier's books because they're very character driven. What book has my sons got me to try and love? See, Peter's such a new reader. He hasn't really recommended me any books. So hopefully he will in the future. I mean, I've listened to the Paddington books because of him. So that's been really fun. Books I'm Not Reading says, what is your favorite Booktube event? And if you are the host of that event, how much time do you spend planning and preparing for it? This is a fun question. So my two favorite Booktube events are Victober and Middle Grade March. So I really buckle up for Victober. I mean, I don't count how much time I spend preparing. I spend hundreds of hours on Victober. I would like to kind of take the middle ground and spend less time, doing videos, but I just get so hyper focused on Victober, and it's like I can't not be doing creative things around it. So I spend hundreds of hours preparing for Victober. If I could, I would like to just kind of try to have a calmer approach to Victober this next year, but it's kind of like every year, once the end of the summer comes, my brain is spilling over with ideas for Victober videos and books I want to read then. So maybe I'll have a more chill approach this year. I don't know. Middle Grade March is really fun though, because I am not one of the hosts. I don't have to do a single thing for it. I usually host like a read along, and I'm hosting a discussion of The Railway Children this year, and that is just really light and easy. But I do love about Victober that it is such a time of like creative energy for me. And then Bree Hill says, what are some of my go-to quick meals? And what is one book I wish I could experience reading again for the first time? What was the last mystery that took me completely by surprise? Bree, these are such fun questions. Okay, some of my go-to quick meals. I don't know that I have go-to quick meals because I'm home like so much of the time. So I don't really think about, is a meal quick to make? I'm going to be thinking about that. That's a very good question. And I will let you know if I come up with anything. Okay, one that just comes to my mind, and this is so incredibly simple, but I love to just cook breakfast sausage, break it up, crumble it up, cook breakfast sausage, and just have it on rice. That sounds really like you wouldn't think it's that yummy, but I'm telling you, it is very satisfying and delicious. So yeah, sausage and rice. It's incredibly simple. Yeah, I'm having trouble thinking of quick meals. Like a lot of the meals that I make take longer to make just because that's what works for us. I don't know. One book I wish I could experience reading again for the first time would probably be Anne of Green Gables, I would say. I really, really love Anne of Green Gables, and I remember the first time that I read it, just how smitten I was with it and how just I loved it, and I couldn't believe how much I loved it. The last question is from Bella the Reader, and it says, I hope these aren't too personal, but I am in academia and I find a person's educational background and careers fascinating. I also firmly believe a degree isn't everything and that a person can be self-taught. 1, do you have a college degree? And if yes, from where? 2, have you been an English teacher or would you want to be one when your children are older? Would you choose high school or college? So 1, I do have a college degree, and it is from Geneva College, which is a small liberal arts school in Western Pennsylvania. And I have a degree in elementary education and special education. So I am using it now with homeschooling, not for pay, volunteer work. But I'm really glad that I have that now. And I'm using it while I homeschool. And then I don't think I would want to be a teacher though, because of all of the politics involved with all of the paperwork that teachers have to do. And I feel like teachers are asked so much of them with standardized testing, and how how much of the year revolves around preparing kids for these tests, and how I feel like teachers really aren't given a lot of freedom to choose curriculums that they want. It's like homeschooling, I feel like it's all the perks. So maybe though I would like to be a tutor when the boys are older. I think I could really enjoy that, trying to make math fun for a kid who is struggling with it, or reading fun for a kid that is struggling with it. Yeah. So thank you for these wonderful questions, and I will be back with another video soon.